that when we're talking morphology, we're actually talking about all the parts that make up English orthography, the study of the spelling system. And so as we look at words, there are times when it makes the most sense for us to look at the morphology, the parts that are coming together to make up those words. And usually when you're looking at morphology, the etymology piece obviously plays a factor, because as we have learned over time that the history or the story of the word has to be connected in order for it to live in that word family. And the phonology, which is that grapheme phoneme, the letter sound correspondence, also plays a role in English spelling. But we run into a danger when we only teach one part of the puzzle. And so this isn't saying, phonics bad, morphology good. That's not what this is. It's saying there is a much more complex landscape in relationship to English spelling that allows us to explain English spelling. And that's the part where I get excited, because it's explainable. We might get to the end and go, well, that's the silliest reason I've ever heard about why that word is spelt the way it is. But sorry, folks, it's still the reason. So we don't always like the reason, but it's still the reason. And so all of these three parts work together in order for our English spelling system to make sense. And we can't just teach one and forsake the others. They're all interconnected. And there's times where it makes way more sense to focus on the phonology, that letter sound correspondence, CVC words, for example, when we're working with our tiny friends, right? But then there's other times where, we might talk about the phonology, the sounds that we hear and what parts are making up those sounds. But the greater conversation lies in the morphology pieces. What are the parts that are coming together to make up those words? The hot seat. Lan, you got a word for me for the hot seat today?
Yeah, I do. And it also was because of the dictation I gave to students. And it was misspelled probably 95% of the time. So the word is creature.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah. And just there's a whole bunch of stuff diving into this word.
Okay. So normally at this point is when I would start. So for those of you who haven't done this with us before, the hot seat is where Lana gives me a word that we have not pre-planned. And then I talk through my thinking around figuring out what the word might be, what the word family might be, how it's built. And so we model this process of hypothesizing a word sum. Just like in science, it's really not about whether or not your hypothesis is correct. It's about coming up with an idea, investigating the idea, and then adjusting our thinking on the other side of things. So it's really just about creating space for learning. So when I see the word creature, I think the word create is in there. So I think it might be something like that. But then I don't know if ATE is acting as another suffix here. And so CRE is a bound base, or if create is the bound base. So like maybe it's something like this. But then if it is that, then I have to be able to think of words that are somehow related that would have CRE as a base that would share that. Okay, so then Rhonda says, what about the word feature? Well, I think feature has the same URE suffix. So I don't like that's a guess there. So we're going to head to our super trusty online etymology dictionary, which has anyone else noticed that it's gotten like a little bit of a revamp lately? But I only notice it in some of my windows. So I don't know if sometimes I'm like clicking on the extension. Anyways, easily distracted. Okay, so I look up the word creature. And 1300s, anything created, hence a thing. a living being. From Old French, creature, but that's not how they would have said it. Late Latin, creatura, maybe. I don't speak Latin. From cretus, past participle of Latin creare. So I'm going to copy this one and I'm going to go to my Latin dictionary. And see if, oh, okay. So we're going to talk about this a little bit later as well. But when we're working with Latin verbs, we look at the second and the fourth of them in the list. So I see here creare, and I take off this are ending. So that leaves me with the CRE. I do the same thing over here. I take off the US, but then I also take off the AT. And that leaves me with the CRE. So CRE is my base element. To bring about, to cause, to grow, elect, produce or bear fruit. So I'm actually going to go back here to my Edum Online dictionary, and I am going to put that Latin word inside the search. Now, this doesn't work on the app on your phone. I don't know why. It's like it doesn't let you search the Latin ones. Okay. But if I put it here, it's going to give me all the listings in the Edum Online where it has this Latin word in it. So create, that makes sense to me. Procreate, creation. So create, yep. Recreation. Oh, fun.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's one of those ones where I wouldn't necessarily think that recreation and creature live in the same word family. Because again, remember, it's totally normal for pronunciation to change across a word family, depending on how many bits you've added onto it, because we're a stress timed language. And so when you add more syllables, we change the Creole. Fun. Is that all there is?
And I think when you think of what the word create means, like to bring forth, so even when you
Mm-hmm.
what recreation is, right?
Yeah.
Is to bring forth that action, right? Of activity.
Refresh, restore, make anew, revive, invigorate.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
So
But
if
you
you were to do your word sum, right? Like your actual
mm-hmm.
word sum with the word creature, your original thought of create plus the URE is where the students in grade 5, 6 went in my class, because that's kind of where our understanding is.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole idea of the verb create. So to bring forth, I guess, or to have some action or whatever, if we add the UR ending, all of a sudden now you've created a noun, like a being. So starting with a verb, but then what happens when you add the suffix URE, and where else would that happen? And so I even think of that word we did a long time ago, Charlie, I don't even know when it was, but fixture.
Mm-hmm.
After the fixture,
Yes.
right? That fixture of being that noun, now it's the fixture of the light or whatever sitting there, but it's fixated. Like, I don't know. It was just, it came up to me with that.
Now, when I look at all the words that I have in this list, all of the ones, because even recreation has create in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think you could argue, oh, maybe not Creole.
Mm-hmm.
That one would be tricky, but I don't even, if OLE is yeah. It's like OLE really isn't a suffix. So Creole would kind of live in its own word family anyways, potentially. But what my thinking was, is you could probably argue for both of these, right?
Yeah.
We dug a little deeper in the Latin dictionary. That justifies the CRE plus ATE plus URE. But if I was working with a group of grade 5 or 6 kids, then I would look at the word create, right?
Yeah.
And add the URE. Okay, this is some other stuff that fits in there. So this is another one of those examples where Len and I've talked about this before. It's totally okay to take what we know to be bound base word building element like CRE and suffix it up like create, right? We've got the bound and the other part that's bound together. It makes a word that appears to be a free base word. It's okay to only go that far. Like we don't need to go in the depths of the Latin with all of the kids all of the time. We can go as far as it makes sense for the kiddos that we're working with and their understanding. When we're talking about working with words with students and they're having difficulty spelling things, perhaps, then I might switch this up and start doing, so even though TURE is not morpheme, right? But it is a syllable. So now I know that I have words like feature and creature that have the same ending sound that's being made by this TURE that's happening. Are there other words that I can find that share that spelling so that I can cement this idea that there are times when I hear the chur at the end, it's not a CH that's making it, that it's coming from some other place. So you could go off. You could look for other words that make URE that use URE as a suffix, right? So there's many directions that you can veer once you start to dig into some language. So the reason that I'm bringing up this set of words today is because I was in a meeting with my social studies department the other day, and they were talking about this one unit that they do first in social studies 10, I believe, where they kind of like front load all the vocabulary that they're going to be using in social studies 10. So the kids have this vocabulary that they can use to talk social studies. And they even kind of sell it to the kids as learning the language of social studies. So we're going to use words in social studies that you might not have used in your other classes, and we need to know what they mean and how to use them. And the teacher said, you know what? My kids always mix up these words. And then she listed them off: accommodation, assimilation, acculturation. And I said, well, that's really interesting, because my brain always lives in the land of morphology. So I'm like, I wonder why that is, that they get these words confused or mixed up. And I'm not sure, but depending on where your level is of understanding around words and spelling and all that stuff. But the very first thing I noticed was all of these words share the same prefix, the assimilated prefix of AD. Now, when we talk about assimilated prefixes, and it just so happens assimilation is one of the words, that was totally by accident. Think of assimilated prefixes as like little chameleons that, depending on what they get attached to for the base element, they morph their spelling to better match the pronunciation or what our mouths do. So a really good little test is if you take the AD, if we had left it there, so if the word is accommodation, if you just put AD in front of it, so as accommodation, and you say that 5 times fast, you eventually say accommodation. So we naturally morph it in our speaking. And so all of these words have the assimilated prefix AD functioning in them. So that was the first thing I noticed. Then I wanted to do some digging to see what else I could find, mostly because that's what I think is a good idea. So looking at the word accommodation as the first one, I know that AC is the prefix. Now, I'm also guessing here that because I have double M's, that COM is my another prefix. So this is an example of a word that has two prefixes attached to it. And then I'm guessing because I know that ATE and ION are suffixes, that MODE would be the base or the base element. And the reason I threw an E on the end, and you don't necessarily see it up here in the spelling, is because if there was no D, if there was no E, and we added a voweled suffix, we would need to be doubling it, right? That's what we do. And so because of that, there's got to be an E on there. That part of those spelling conventions that we know about. So once I build my thing, so the whole point of building word sums, we talked about this the other day, last day, whatever, was you put out all of your morphemes and then you check the joins. And here we've got these single final non-syllabic E's that are obviously going to get canceled out as part of our spelling conventions. And then we spell the word accommodation on the other side. So to say this word sum, it would be AC plus COM plus MODE plus ATE plus ION is rewritten as ACCOMM OD, replace the E, AT, replace the E, ION, accommodation. That was a lot of letters. And that's how we read that. I can go to my online etymology dictionary here. And look up the word accommodation. And so it's telling us it's from the 1600s, that which supplies a want or a need, an adjustment. So then I'm going to go to accommodate. Accommodate tells us that there's the AD prefix that it came from. Now, I meant to do this earlier, my mistake. I want to look a little bit at this one. So when we see the prefix AD, it can mean to, toward, with regard to, in relation to, but sometimes it's merely emphatic, which means it doesn't actually mean anything. It's like a little cheerleader that's like saying really a lot, whatever the base is. Okay, so all it is it's emphasizing the base, whatever the meaning of the base was. And so when we see the AD prefix, this is typically what we see as the meaning or sense. Okay, so it's not always a definition. Meaning or sense is kind of a better way to think of it. So if I go back here to accommodate, I see commodere from commodus, proper, fit, appropriate, convenient, satisfactory, from COM as a prefix. Here is an intensive prefix. So even COM as a prefix doesn't always have a meaning or a sense. Sometimes it too is a cheerleader. And modus, meaning measure or manner. So from here, I took the Latin word, I went over here, I put it into my Latin dictionary, and it's a little bit different because this is a noun, not a verb. But I can see here a consistency of the MOD part. And at this point, I'm just kind of inferring that it's MODE. Now, one way that I can check is I can type that modus up here and I can see if it comes up. So modular, interesting, modal, modify. I'm not even sure how to pronounce that, but it's generative from this, so I'm not too worried. Immodest, module. Now, the word mode might come up here as one of the words. Let's see if it does. Modus, right there, measure. So we also know that E in itself is not a suffix. So if I've got mode here in this spelling and it's connected to modus, then the base has to be MODE. Because otherwise, where does the E come from? The next one is assimilation. Now, this one was tricky, but also kind of fun in like that dorky English teacher sort of way. I knew the prefix, AS. I knew the suffixes were ATE and ION, but I wasn't sure what the middle looked like. So it's okay to work from the outside in if you're not sure where the morphemes are living within a word. So that's what I did first. And that left me with SIMILE in the middle. And I was like, is it possible that the word simile, as in a comparison using like or as, right? English teacher friends, you're with me here, is actually the base of this word? Is that possible? So I have assimilation, the act of assimilating, and it's connecting me to the verb assimilate. That shouldn't surprise anybody. So then I go over here and I see the AD prefix again. So yay, I was right about that. In this sense, meaning to, okay? Plus simulare, to make similar from similis, like resembling of the same kind, see similar. Sorry, Lan, I'm just reading here. Actually, working suffix and prefix towards the middle of the word to break in the word sum is the best way to digest words. Absolutely. It reminds me of that saying, like, how do you need an elephant? One bite at a time. Like, start at the outside and work your way in. And once you do this work, you will start, right? So like an ATION ending. Well, I know that's ATE and I know that's ION. When we have these double letters at the beginning of a word, quite often that's telling us we've got some sort of an assimilated prefix thing going on. So once you start to see the patterns, then you can transfer them to new words that you've come across. And you can pause and go, oh, I wonder if this is what's happening here. So you're absolutely right, Lana. That's the easiest way to really get a sense of the patterns of English spelling, which is exactly what we're talking about. So we have medieval Latin, Old Latin. I'm going to look up this word, similis. And there's a bunch of them. So I've got an adjective here. They also had, meaning like, similar, or resembling. So that makes sense. There was an adjective here. So see, there's like quite a few of them. So it's entirely possible, like, similar, resembling. So here's where I found the verb. So counterfeit, which if you're going to counterfeit something, right, you're replicating the thing. A copy, a look-alike. Again, the second and the fourth, I take out the ARE, I take out the US and the AT, and I'm left with SIMIL, but there has to be an E on the end because we're not doubling that L anytime that we're adding other stuff to it. Okay. So what that means is SIMILE is the base, and then AR is added as a suffix in the word similar. So I'm going to skip ahead here because I think, so there's the spelling of assimilation with the things. I'm skipping ahead to this because I built out this one as a word matrix. So dissimilar, assimilate, assimilated, assimilating. Facsimile is actually a compound word with two bound bases from facere, to make. So for those of you who are younger, a facsimile is the long word for fax. And a fax machine, Lana's laughing, but it's true. A fax machine sends the duplicate of your papers. Now, in the olden days, it wasn't like digital. It was like this machine in the back office that made these crazy noises, almost like dial-up internet, but not quite. And so I thought that was really neat that the front end of it is from facere, and then, yeah, so facsimile is a word. Now, here's the other one that I thought was really interesting. It was in another meeting with one of my departments, my English department, and they were looking at short stories in grade, I want to say 11. And they were talking about, and I'm probably going to say this wrong, verisimilitude. Verisimilitude. It's a Latin word, but it's part of this family. And it means that, like, what the story has, how the story proceeds, it makes sense. Like, it's following in a logical order, and where it ends is kind of where you expect it to end. Kind of cool. And I don't know, like, I don't honestly know, folks, and I've been teaching for a little bit, if I ever put together that the word simile, because it's a comparison using like or as, I've had that definition ingrained in my brain since probably grade 5. And similar, we're connected. But that's what a comparison is. So, like, where was my brain for the last little while?
Charlie, do you want it to blow up even more?
Yes.
So the word that Rhonda put in the chat, feature,
Yeah.
historically is related to like facsimile. They share the same, like facere or whatever, F-A-C-E-R-E.
Oh, facere. Yeah.
Yes.
Nice.
So way to go, Rhonda.
Yeah. Just bringing it full circle. I love a good full circle conversation. So needless to say, you can really go off the deep end. The rabbit holes are deep and dark here in the land of morphology. And I could go on and on about some of these words, obviously. Very briefly, though, I want to talk about this Latin verb stuff. And if you're new to this work, and at this point you want to like curl up in the fetal position on the floor and be like, we totally get it. We have been there. I remember Alana and I having like a back channel conversation during one of the first sessions we did with Mary Beth Stevens. And it was just like, WTF, now I have to learn Latin. Like, what is happening here? I thought I knew stuff. I know nothing. And so if you're in that spot, like, don't freak out. It'll come. So this particular image comes from one of Mary Beth's sessions, but you can also find this same sort of structure explained in Beneath the Surface of Words. It's also in the resource that I talked about last day, which, oh, good, I haven't put it away yet. This one, ooh, let me see if it'll, ooh, I hate the blur background. There we go. This one here, vocabulary and morphology, it's linked in the resources section. It talks a little bit about this, but essentially what we look at when it lists the 4 Latin verbs, we're looking at the infinitive and the supine, because they're the ones most likely to influence English spelling. What you do with it is you take off the infinitive suffixes, and that's what gives you your base element. And this is where we discover twin bases or associate bases when there's more than 2 words that come out of that same base element. So that facere that we were just talking about, it is a rather prolific Latin verb that has given us many iterations for our English spelling. Now, I typically use the LatDict website because that's the one Mary Beth uses. So there's probably other Latin dictionaries out there, but that's the one we use. So it's linked there here in this little screenshot. And remember, this is about working with Latin verbs They obviously had other parts of speech. It doesn't always play nice with those. That's fine. But it's sometimes interesting to discover that, why are move and motion connected? Well, they actually share the same Latin root, movere. So MOTE and MOVE come from the same family origin. They both come to the same family reunion, but they would sit on different picnic blankets. In our last few minutes together here today, I just want to highlight for you, or re-highlight for you, the Can Do Kids Academy website. I believe the teacher's from Australia, if I'm remembering correctly. And the great thing about her work is, first of all, these first few that she has here are just top-notch resources. I love, love, love them. But if you go priced low to high, you can see all the stuff she has on her website for free. And so I screenshotted a couple on the slide deck, and I've linked them for the ones I thought were related to spring. So growth, rain. But she also does book study or text connections. So I think every person has read The Dot, or has read Ish. There's other great Ada Twist Scientist. So it's looking at the digraph WH. So they're not all necessarily looking at the morphology piece of spelling. Sometimes they're looking at the phonology piece, that grapheme phoneme connection. The Word Collector, love that book.
Look at it above, Charlie. Create. Do you see it? Right in the middle there. Go up a little bit. Our word today. Note down. Yeah, there it is.
There it is.
There it is. Creature.
So, there it is. Creature. So here's the thing. I am more likely as a human learner, am going to remember that I did all that work. I wrote what I thought it was going to be. I went to the website. I tried to think of other ways or words that would build that out. And ta-da, here's where I landed. That is going to carry with me further than if the teacher handed out a worksheet to me with this matrix on and said, make some words. So think about how we are preparing our learners to build skills to transfer to other words and contexts. So this is the Can Do Kids Academy. It's linked in the slide deck. She makes just beautiful stuff. And many of the items are free. So these two things that I've linked here for you in the slide deck today are free resources. You just have to make an account, you download them, it's instant, you pay nothing. It's beautiful.